The history of Middle-earth is rich with epic narratives. The fall of Númenor, the War of the Ring, and the final defeat of the Dark Lord, Sauron. Yet, within this grand tapestry, some threads remain frustratingly loose, weaving tales of profound significance shrouded in almost total darkness. No story is more tantalizingly incomplete than that of the Istari, or the wizards, specifically the two who vanished into the vast unknown lands of the East, Alatar and Pallando, the Blue Wizards. Unlike the renowned figures of Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast, whose successes and failures shaped the destiny of the West, the Blue Wizards represent the greatest canonical mystery bequeathed by J.R.R. Tolkien. Their silence raises questions that pierce the very heart of the conflict between good and evil. Did they fail? Were they corrupted? Or conversely, did they achieve a quiet, unnoticed victory that made the eventual triumph of the West possible? This deep dive begins by grounding ourselves in the essential truth of their being and the monumental mission they were assigned. To truly understand the Blue Wizards, one must first grasp the true nature of the Istari. They were not mere mortal men with magical abilities, but Maya, spirits of the same divine order as Sauron, sent from the undying lands, Valinor. Their selection and dispatch occurred around the year 1000 of the Third Age, a strategic move by the Valar, the great powers of the world, in response to the slow, insidious return of Sauron. The Valar understood that an open war fought by divine beings would be catastrophic to Middle-earth. Therefore, the Maya were sent in humble, aging human forms, the Rhûn, deliberately weakened and constrained. Their mandate was clear. They were to aid the free peoples of Middle-earth, elves, men, and dwarves, by counsel, comfort, and encouragement, not by matching the Dark Lord's power or seeking to dominate the inhabitants through overt force. The Council of Five was chosen: Curumo, Saruman, the head of the Order; Olorin, Gandalf, the wisest; Iwendil, Radagast, the protector of the natural world; and finally Alatar and Pallando, the two Blue Wizards clothed in robes of sea blue. They arrived together, but their paths immediately diverged. Saruman, Gandalf, and Radagast dedicated themselves to the lands west of the Anduin River, focusing on the immediate threats of Isengard, the Shire, and Mirkwood. Alatar and Pallando, however, were assigned a task of far greater breadth and isolation, immediately departing for the east, Rhûn, accompanied initially only by Saruman before he returned to his primary area of operations. This departure marks the end of their story in the primary narratives of the West. They were never seen or heard from again by their three peers, save for a fleeting reference years later. Their mission was one of preventative warfare and covert sabotage. While Gandalf and the others fought Sauron's military forces in the west, Alatar and Pallando were tasked with undermining his influence where it was strongest. Among the Easterlings, Rhûn, and the various populations of men in the deep south and east, these were the men Sauron had corrupted and enslaved since the First Age, turning them into tireless enemies of Gondor and Rohan. Tolkien writes little of the East, reinforcing its role as a land swallowed by darkness, yet the Blue Wizard's presence there suggests a desperate, vital strategic move. Their goal was likely twofold: to sow dissent, inciting resistance, and cultivating free thought among the peoples enslaved by the Dark Lord, and to prevent coordination, ensuring that Sauron could never fully unify the countless tribes and kingdoms of the East into a single, overwhelming military force, which could have easily crushed the West. The vastness of their assignment, stretching from the Sea of Rhûn to the shores of Khand and beyond, dwarfed the geographical remit of the other wizards combined. They were fighting a shadow war in a hostile land, without the aid of elven kingdoms or strong Gondorian fortresses. The canonical vacuum surrounding Alatar and Pallando has bred the most compelling and conflicted theories in all of Middle-earth lore. Now, we must turn our attention to the heart of the enigma. Did the Blue Wizards, these divine emissaries, fail and succumb to corruption? Or did they achieve an unseen, crucial success that was key to Sauron's final downfall? Understanding this requires analyzing the inherent spiritual weakness built into the Istari's mission, the very thing that caused Saruman's ruin, and examining J.R.R. Tolkien's own contradictory pronouncements on their fate. The spiritual peril faced by the Istari was existential. When the Maiar spirits took human form, J.R.R., they were deliberately limited, forced to rely on their embodied wisdom. This was meant to ensure they acted as counselors, not overlords, but it introduced a fatal flaw: vulnerability to corruption, distraction, and despair. The temptation was to bypass the slow work of counsel and seek domination, as Saruman did. For the Blue Wizards, Alatar and Pallando, the risk was exponentially higher, venturing far beyond the protective light of the West. Failure for them meant a spiritual death, a corruption that could lead them to become local powers, sowing the seeds of perpetual conflict. The core of our speculation rests on two major, conflicting accounts penned by Tolkien himself. The first, the tragic view, suggests they fell away into the cults of the East, seeking local power or establishing families, thus failing their divine commission. This outcome is plausible given the high spiritual risk inherent in the Istari's embodied state and the relentless pressure of their isolation. They operated deep within enemy territory, centuries away from any ally, navigating cultures steeped in ancient darkness. Conversely, Tolkien's later, more hopeful theory suggests they must have had very great influence, successfully preventing Sauron from using the full force of the Easterlings and Southerners. This unseen dedication meant they fulfilled the most vital function of the Istari, reducing Sauron's power and ensuring the free peoples had a fighting chance. The challenges of Rhûn and Harad were immense. The sheer scale of the land and the fact that Sauron was worshipped as a god meant they were fighting deeply ingrained faith, not just armies. Their methods had to be constrained to whispers and shadows. They needed to introduce doubt into the established cults, cultivate local dissidents, and challenge the theological legitimacy of Sauronic worship, all without resorting to open magic or domination. The ultimate test was the temptation of kingship. Operating among fractured, warring tribes, the path to influence was to become the ruler. Had Alatar and Pallando succumbed to this snare, they would have violated their divine mandate, likely becoming regional demigods themselves. The failure theory argues the spiritual weight of millennia-old darkness was too much, that their resolve faded, leading them to become warlocks in local legends, trading their eternal mission for temporary power. Yet the strongest evidence for the success theory is Sauron's failure to achieve total unification. The fact that his armies attacked the West piecemeal, never as one crushing tide, is the result of the Blue Wizards' tireless, invisible work, sowing dissent and promoting internal conflict among the Easterners. Their 5,000 years in Rhûn and Harad defined the strategic viability of the West. Had they failed immediately, Sauron would have marched west with an unstoppable force long before Frodo left the Shire. Their story is the tragic footnote that made the main story possible. If you find this hidden history fascinating, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support ensures we can continue unveiling the deepest mysteries of Tolkien's world. Our next step is to examine the specific threats the Blue Wizards faced in Rhûn and Harad, and how those unique circumstances dictated the method and outcome of their long, secret war.